Welcome to Mothers Illuminated. This is where we help light the pathway through motherhood. I'm your host, Michelle McCartney, here at the Co-work of Londonderry. If you're a mom looking for a great place to get some work done away from the house and your crazy kids, definitely look at the Co-work of Londonderry at londonderry.cowork.com. Co-work is spelled C-O-W-E-R-C. They have office space, conference rooms, workshops for business owners, podcast rooms, and a lot of great benefits for members. So today I'm visited by Adina, and you own Strong as a Mother Fighter, which is an amazing name.
Thank you.
And so obviously that's a little bit of a play on words, but it's interesting too because moms, a lot of times you have like that whole mom bear mentality. Yeah. So I think that that's just like the perfect name. So obviously you do a lot of different stuff. I know you blog, you're an MMA fighter, competitive lifter, event planner, business owner, coach. You've got a son, stepdaughter, a couple cats, and your husband. So kind of give us like a backstory as to what you do, kind of some of the businesses that you own, and how you got to where you are now.
So let's see. So yes, I have my little website. It was kind of a joke of play on words that just kind of evolved into like, let's just see if it's a domain name. Yeah. And then it turned into my website. Before that, I just was like kind of a regular coach, but so I do all sorts of coaching, but I specialize mostly in martial arts. That's kind of been my passion for the last 20 years. Yeah, something like that. I've been doing a dozen type of martial arts. I just love kind of everything. Kind of fell onto MMA, so I have a 3-0 record as an amateur. I've done other martial arts, but I love to coach. I love doing women's kickboxing just for myself, but on top of that, I do have a son. He just turned 3. I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter. I have 2 Bengal cats because I love cats so much. My husband would not like me saying that because he's not a cat person. But we have cats now. Yeah. And I, pre-COVID, did event planning and design. So 2020 was supposed to be my year, and it was not my year, unfortunately. But it just transitioned into something else. In fact, in its own very bizarre way, our landscaping, my husband and I have a landscaping company, we have blossomed into having a ridiculous amount of work. We actually are branching out and hiring more people and expanding.
That's awesome.
So totally not the direction I wanted for myself, but it works for my husband. Yeah. And it's okay. We're building a tiny home right now. What else do we do? We're just all over the place, but my main things are really just the event world and martial arts and fitness. So
awesome. Yeah. We are definitely going to have you back on later for another show to talk about your tiny house journey. Yeah. Because that's awesome too.
I'm excited. It's not as fun to build it in the winter, but I can't wait until it's done. So
that's awesome. So, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of different things going on. Kind of how do you juggle all the different businesses? Oh, I know you said the landscaping is kind of the big one right now, but I know you are still doing a little bit of like the kickboxing and self-defense classes.
Yeah, so
and you have a child.
I know. It's a lot of, we bring our son kind of everywhere. It's challenging. I'm not going to lie. It's very challenging. We previously were at a couple different gyms, and we just brought him, and people he's a cute little boy, so they just go, oh, that's fine. He can just hang out with me behind the front desk at the gym, and it just worked out. Sometimes we have to take him to job sites. That's sometimes its own challenge, but mostly landscaping, it's a little difficult, but juggling is really hard. For the most part, most of my week is working landscaping or just doing mom stuff, and then the rest of it is I do women's classes at night and early in the morning, and sometimes I just have to take him, and most people actually like it. He's kind of a fun distraction from their push-ups.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think a lot of them are moms.
Yeah.
So they probably get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I always tell my classes are always going to be kid friendly because I get it. It's really hard. You got to get a babysitter, make sure that you have childcare in any form, and then go about it. It's, I don't care. Bring your kid.
Yeah.
That's
so
fine.
what do the kids normally do if somebody was to bring their kid? Do you have like a separate little area for them?
I typically do. I have far too many kids' toys. Or I should say my son has far too many toys.
Yeah.
And we just stash them at different locations that we tend to visit. So the location for where we're teaching our classes is downstairs of a cafe. And so we have a little closet area that we just have some blankets and pillows and toys, and kids can share that. Or I also have kids exercise equipment. I have like 1 pound weights. So I love to have kids involved. And especially if you have like a little baby, they can be little weights, and just you can actually do a lot of working out with kids. So
Aww, that's so cute.
He's just always been there. He'll do walking lunges with me in class, and eventually he gets, bored and plays with his trucks, but he likes to work out with me, so it's really cute.
Yeah. No, that's super sweet. So before I was like, super, super pregnant, I would do like yoga at home, and my 2-year-old absolutely loved doing it with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, she didn't quite understand the concept of like, she should touch her toes while I'm touching my toes.
Yeah.
But instead she would try to help me touch my toes.
It's cute.
Like,
Yeah. My son
it's so cute.
I love it. So yes, it can be hard and frustrating, but it's also just adorable. So
yeah,
it's hard to be mad.
Yeah, and that's part of being a mom too. Is you lead with example. So when you're sitting there and exercising, it shows your kids that that's a normal thing to do, and that's a positive thing to do. And then getting them involved sets them up for great experiences in the future.
Absolutely. So that's kind of why I say kids class. It's women's classes, but please bring your kids. If you can't find a sitter and you're freaking out, just come. We'll make it work. I'll make it work.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a quick break real quick to talk about Elated Canine. So Elated Canine Training and Pet Services, LLC, is here for your family pet's needs. We work with all ages and breeds. We run day training in our home while you're at work, private lessons at your home, group lessons, and a few other tailor-made services. Please contact Jocelyn at 603-479-7253 or on our website at elatedcanine.com for more information. We can't wait to help both you and your pup find the happy, healthy relationship you're searching for. So let's dive into, because I know you do like the competitive lifting and things like that. And, in today's society, the way that, all the different body image, stuff is it's like you don't want to be too big, but then you don't want to be too muscular. You have to find like that soft medium.
It's hard.
And, especially as a competitive lifter, a lot of times, you're going to tone up a bit.
Yeah.
So kind of, if you want to talk a little bit more about like body image and kind of how that comes into exercising and, even you personally being a power lifter, how that's affected you.
So in a weird turn of events, I actually, before I became super into lifting, I had, all through my childhood, I've always had some form of eating disorders. Sometimes it was very extreme. Some of it was moderate, but I always had this ingrained thought that I had to be thin. And even when I was doing martial arts through high school, it still was like, you have to be thin. Like, it just was like an ingrained thing for most women. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I really started getting into bodybuilding and powerlifting that it was like just a snap. It just switched, and it was like, I don't need to be thin. I just really want to be strong. Mm-hmm. And then you get into this, like, it still can be bad because it just feels like you are never enough. Like, either you're not thin enough or you're not strong enough, you're not big enough. However it is, like, it's hard to tell women that you're enough. Like, I understand that, if you are a professional athlete, like, there has to be some obvious, like, bar of what you need to perform, but you are always going to be enough. And everyone's going to look differently in any sport, even though there's the generalizations of being bigger. There's plenty of smaller looking females that lift crazy weights. Mm-hmm. I fight at 105 pounds. Yeah. And that's like ridiculously small. Yeah. But I'm also very strong, and then I can, deadlift 300 pounds. Like, that's unheard of and bizarre. Yeah. But I'm just small, and it's okay. It's okay for everyone to be either big or small. Everyone's just enough, and it's hard to get to that, like, mental satisfaction point. So just, if you take anything away from this, you are enough how you are.
Yeah. And how so you said a little bit about how, doing the competitive lifting has kind of helped you find that for yourself.
Absolutely.
So what was that journey like for you?
It started in a weird place. It really started with lifting specifically started with trying to find more about myself. I started by just being kind of like a couch to marathon type thing. It was couch to bodybuilding competition. I just signed up with no experience or anything, and I still did it. And then I got the satisfaction of doing something. Even though I didn't win, I realized that I needed to improve to get to a place. And then I eventually did make top 3, and I continued to travel and compete. But it's not easy to start. Nothing's easy to start.
Yeah.
But once you get into the habit of that, even if it's whatever it is you're trying to do, you're starting a new business, you're doing anything, if you just start and just do a little bit each day, it just makes a huge... It will seem like you're doing absolutely nothing for a month until you look back and go, I lost 15 pounds. My shoulders are yoked. Yeah. How did this happen? I thought I was like a chubby kid last week.
Yeah.
It's a slow going motion, but keep going.
And that's absolutely true too, because I know there's so many different things, like even, when it comes to like birth. What do they say is, and you can handle one contraction, like just focus on that one contraction, because anybody can do something for a minute.
Yep.
And it's the same concept. And there's a Japanese kind of rule of thumb that basically says, if you're trying to start something, just start off with like 5 minutes, just 5 minutes a day, do it. And it's just because anybody can sit there and read for 5 minutes a day.
Right.
Anybody can exercise for, you know what I mean? Like that's just a small amount of time that literally anybody can do it.
Absolutely.
And then, once that becomes habit, you add a little bit more on, and you add a little bit more, and then eventually you're doing 30 minutes to an hour a day.
And it's like nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what I do with my reading right now. I leave it in the bathroom. It's the only place I can have peace and quiet.
Yeah.
So I just hide in there and pretend I'm going to the bathroom sometimes so I can read a chapter.
Well, you're lucky, because my daughter likes to follow me in there, and then she's like, are you pooping? Are you peeing? I'm like, yes, I am. Like, leave me alone.
That's my son, too. I block it. My son and my cat will come into the bathroom with me.
Yeah.
They're both mama's boys.
Oh, yes. The life of a mom.
I know.
So obviously, you've got a little bit of a competitive nature to you, which is part of what helps drive you, which is great, because obviously it's, led you to all these different businesses and, getting you to the point where you are now. How do you see that that's affected the way that you parent and even your marriage?
It actually kind of got me and my husband together. So, actually, funny story, I didn't like him for about 10 years of knowing him. He was too competitive and too cocky and too much and I was very competitive. So it was always like a one-up thing. He was actually the first person in the gym. He was a coach at the gym, at one of the gyms we've been to a long time ago. And he was the only person that actually treated me like another fighter instead of like a 21-year-old girl. So everyone else just hit me lightly, and he didn't. Yeah. And I respected that. It also sucked because he's much heavier than I am. Yeah. I know this sounds weird probably in a podcast, but it was the first time that I was like, okay, yeah, this is what it actually, wow, everyone's treating me differently. He definitely doesn't, which was good and bad. It made me a lot more competitive, and it opened my eyes to like how martial arts could be. And then it just kind of opened up the constant competitiveness, because he's going to hit me hard. I'm going to hit him back. And I had to get better than him. Yeah. And even though I disliked him, I had to be better than him. And then I started to like him. And now here we are. But we're still really competitive, and sometimes it's actually not healthy. If we can't even play Tony Hawk Pro Skater on Xbox without, like, mostly me throwing a tantrum because I don't know how to play video games. So it's good and bad. As far as parenting goes, it's definitely interesting because we both fight for all the attention, even though I get all of it because I'm the mom.
Yeah.
But it's always we definitely, we're too competitive. And we also bring it on our child, too. So if we are at the gym with our son and we're just working out together, we're like, all right, Klaus, you have to beat us in this foot race.
Yeah.
And he's, a 3-year-old, like, what? I will let him win. My husband does not. And then he goes, ha ha, you lose. And then usually he has a toddler tantrum, and then it goes into, and then he lets him win the next time. But yeah. So we're a competitive family, for better or worse.
Yeah.
It's a toss up sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely. It's funny because, I mean, there are some parts of being competitive that's good because it pushes you to be better.
Right. That's why we're successful, because we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I can definitely understand some.
Yeah, I know.
Some of that. I think there's a little bit of competitiveness, in almost every relationship, and every, everybody's competitive to some degree. And, I know, like, for us, it's funny you were talking about the video games, because I absolutely hate video games. I can't play them.
Yeah, me neither.
But my husband, like, he'll sit there and that's his way of unwinding. My way is, like, take the kid, I'm closing the door, and I'm going to go take a bath for, like, an hour.
Yeah.
And, that's my unwinding. His is playing video games, which is fine. I don't care. But sometimes he's like, oh, you should play with me. And then I'll try, and then I get angry and frustrated because I don't know what I'm doing.
That's me. I'm not good at it. And I don't like being bad at things.
Yeah.
So I take it so personally.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, but that's part of how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
Is you don't like being bad at things. So you keep working and, getting better and better.
I'll have to sneak the video game when you're not home and get better.
Just be like, oh, why don't you take the kids for a vacation for the weekend, and then you just sit there and practice.
Stupid video game. I hate them, but I'm going to get better.
So real quick, we're going to dive into Homefront Firearms. For some of the best training that you'll get in the Northeast, Homefront Firearms Training is offering 10% off a private lesson with code HOME10 when you register. Go to www.homefrontft.com. So we're going to dive right into talking a little bit about, exercise routines. So I know there's a lot of moms out there who, maybe they do have some drive of competitiveness, but they're kind of lost because it is really hard to start.
Yeah.
So, maybe they're in a situation where they're not really all that healthy, so it's exhausting. They don't have the energy, or maybe they're just really busy with all the kids and whatever else they've got going on. So I was hoping we could talk a little bit about, how do you find the time to get your exercise in? Now, obviously, for you, it's a little different because you own a business. So, I mean, it's a little easier to squeeze it in when you're doing it with other people. And then what are some of your, like, daily routines that you follow?
Yeah, so I definitely know that it's hard as a mom to do anything. And even on days when I'm not at the gym training other people or training myself, I still try to do something. And it's not nearly what I used to do, but I always try to do just something. And it is really hard to start. And I will always say that you're never going to stick to something that you hate. You got to find anything. If you like biking, get an attachment with a child seat or one of the little trailer things to bring your kids with you. Like finding ways to bring your kids into it, even though it also creates an extra frustration sometimes, but it also will give them the view that it's an important piece of the day. One thing I will always suggest is having other people around you that are interested in it. And whether even if you're working out at home, it's really easy to grab your, 35-pound toddler and do 10 squats real quick.
Yeah.
Put some microwave popcorn in the microwave, and by the time do squats until that popcorn's done, and there you go. There's a workout right there. I love to do that. I do not sit idly by during the daytime. Probably why my kid's very hyper, because he watches me do lunges while I'm cooking dinner, because I'm just like, why stand? I could squat.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, all of that motion will add up. It's crazy. On my, like, super, what I would consider lazy days, and my Fitbit's like, you've only done 9,000 steps today and it's 5 o'clock, I still at least have done something. I'll always hit 10,000 because then I'll clean the house. It's amazing how many calories you can burn cleaning the house. Seriously.
Yeah.
I would always say finding something you love is really important because you'll never stick to stuff that you hate if you don't like it. And it could be anything. It could be dancing. Toss on some kids show. Disney's great. Another thing is all those fun drinking games for movies, those can be turned into exercise challenges. So, a shot every time so-and-so says whatever word can be 10 push-ups.
That's a great idea.
I do that all the time. We do that with Disney movies. I actually have a whole slew of them I should probably put on my website that I made little templates for that I give to some of my clients because they can't figure out what to do when they have kids, especially if they have newborns and they can't really do a whole lot. That's my favorite thing. Just play this Disney movie. I have a great one for Toy Story 4. And you can get a good workout in. Or even on commercials. If you just work out for the extent of a commercial, although most people have like Netflix. But
yeah,
it all adds up. It doesn't have to mean you have to dedicate 30 whole minutes a day to an exercise. It could be 10 seconds here, 30 seconds there, a minute later on. It all adds up, and it's all movement. And I would highly suggest if you're not someone that worked out before, start by doing fun challenges that you can do just randomly throughout the day. And then eventually you'll get the taste and the interest to do more. Or if you find a really fun hobby, sledding, go outside and play with your kids. It's really good to go outside. Even when it's 9 degrees, it's so important to have that vitamin D from the sun, and it's so important to just have fresh air. And the cold air is actually really good for your immune system as well.
Yeah.
So,
have you ever heard of the Wim Hof method?
Is that the nap?
No. So it's just kind of discovered by Wim Hof, who's a Dutchman, and basically he discovered this whole method. And what he does is it's a series of like breathing. So it's like, it's a certain pattern of breathing, yoga exercises, and then you do cold water therapy.
Ooh.
And the whole idea is exactly that cold is actually very good for you.
It is.
And it helps condition your body to be able to handle stress.
That's interesting. No, I haven't heard of that. I know one of the daycares that I was looking at, they do outdoor naps, and even in the winter, they just do outdoor. And then there's like so many amazing benefits to that. And I know that it's just, we're just conditioned to be complacent. Even me, it's just kind of how we are, unfortunately. So just getting out of that mindset and just going outside. There's never bad weather. There's just bad clothing.
That's a good way to think about it. I like that. And then, so when you're doing these different classes, like your MMA classes, obviously you tailor them a lot towards moms because that's kind of where you're at in life. And so the people that come to you to take your MMA classes, what are usually like the top 3 reasons why they're joining the class? Is it more to get more active, to get more fit, lose weight? Is it more self-defense oriented? Because I know you do some self-defense stuff too.
It's mostly to lose weight. Mostly lose weight or get a little more fit. Every so often I have, or just to do something fun. A lot of people are just like, oh, I did like 9 rounds and I want to like actually learn like the right way to do stuff and like learn like the real side of it. But for the most part, it's just something fun that's different and to lose weight or just get fit as a whole. Very rarely, almost never, is it someone that's like, I want to fight because it's not until later on that they like find that interest. So it's really just the weight loss thing. And so a lot of I hate advertising weight loss, and not that it's not important, but I think having like a whole body lifestyle change is far more important than just losing weight in any old way. So that's just my mentality, and I enjoy having people be fit. Gaining strength is, in my opinion, more important than just solely losing weight, unless you're very obese. It's more important for your bones. It's more just your, nutrient absorption, everything, just having a little bit more. And trust me, it takes a lot to get manly.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be like, oh, I lifted 10-pound weights and I'm a man now. Like, it's not. No.
Yeah.
It takes years and years and years and years and, like, a strict diet and a crazy schedule. Like, you have to really try. It doesn't just happen accidentally. So, that rumor's gone.
Yes.
Just work out.
And then, so, no, that's probably true. Like,
I know, it sounds fun. But, yeah, I'm not saying, like, you shouldn't lose weight if you very specifically need to, but for the most part, like, you just want to be healthy. You want to be healthy for yourself, for your kids, especially if you're a mom, for your partner. Just, you have to have respect for you. You have one body. You should respect that. Yeah. So.
And one of the other things that I find interesting is there's a lot of people out there that go to the, chiropractors. And chiropractors are amazing because they, help with spinal alignment and, all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it's a mix. You have to have the good spinal alignment, but you also have to have the good functional muscle structure to hold that adjustment.
And if you don't exercise while doing it, it just kind of shifts back to how it was when it was incorrectly.
Yeah.
So, it is interesting.
Do you work at all with, like, physical therapy and, like, posture correction?
I don't. I'd eventually like to get in it. So when I got pregnant, there was nothing as far as, like, how to be a fit mom. There was, like, oh, you just work out. But I'm coming from a very high-impact martial arts background where I, like, get locked in a cage and fight someone until one of us is unconscious. So my
pretty intense.
It's a little different. So there's nothing. There was never like, oh, you can do this up until this many weeks. Like there's just nothing. There's just like go light. And even my midwife, she's like, I've never experienced anyone like you, not like in a bad way to me, but she's like, I've never had a fighter. It's usually just like, I can't say normal people, it's just, like non-martial artists. Moms to be. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole, like trying to find anyone that had any documentation over how to be a professional athlete and go through pregnancy and postpartum. And there's now a lot more. And now I became very kind of obsessed with that. So I'm actually going back to school to get a certificate in prenatal and postpartum training.
Oh, great.
As well as I would love to maybe one day go back for pelvic floor physical therapy, because that's a huge step. If you don't have that pelvic floor healing after you have a baby, it's really hard to have better form. You'll have so many other health issues if you don't address that. And it's easy to not want to do it, because it's especially if you're someone that comes from a very like hyper athletic, you just want to go back to lifting weights and running miles and doing crazy stuff. You got to actually slow down, which is really hard for me. I went back to the gym 2 weeks after I had my baby. I was a crazy person. Don't do that. But what I did find was how to correct posture. So I worked, after I went back and I was like, I'm going to work out, and then I ended up having a lot of bleeding problems after going back too early, like an idiot. So then I was more keen on taking the slow route, so I went back to just healing my pelvic floor, my abdomen, working on posture. I did a lot of yoga, a lot of breathing exercises. That's something that you could do even while pregnant, all of this stuff. So now I'm like really, really obsessed with getting the certificate and going down the whole rabbit hole of how to help people like, not anyone, but definitely people like me that were athletes before and they're totally lost and don't even know what they can and can't do, but they're supposed to go back because that's how they make money, and or maybe that's just their passion. Maybe they're not making tons of money, but so that's kind of what I eventually would like to do.
Yeah, and it's true too, because like after women, give birth, a lot of them end up with some sort of, like you were saying, the pelvic floor issues, or it's diastasis recti is a common one too, and those really affect the way that you can exercise as well, because if you don't get them addressed, then going into something like a kickboxing could do more damage than good.
Yeah, it can do a whole lot. You can have nerve problems. There's just this slew of things that can happen. So just addressing that, and it's hard because it's very slow. It's like just very, very low impact. So it's perfect if you aren't, super competitive and like itching. I know I was itching to go back and do everything, but you have to be smart. So and it's hard to do that. Yeah.
So when you kind of realized that you had to slow down and, kind of rebuild some of those, the posture and the, all those things that need to be repaired after you give birth.
There's a lot. And if it's not visible, it doesn't mean that it's not there.
Right. So did you see a specialist for that, or did you kind of do your own research? How did you do that?
I did my own research. I reached out to a couple people, and I only know her Instagram. It's Brianna Battles. Is her like Instagram tag name. She has all sorts of specializations in this. She has her own course as well. That's kind of what I've been looking at, as well as Girls Gone Strong has a few courses on this. They're mostly geared for athletes. They're not like specific. Well, Brianna, I think, is specialized in pelvic floor rehab, but they had just a ton of information. And I reached out a couple times with just messages, like out of curiosity. I didn't have an actual trainer. I just kind of took their stuff and researched a bunch of other people, and I did it all myself. But I think, and I was very lucky that I was able to heal. I didn't have any separation really in my abdomen. I didn't have any issues, and if I did, I would have gone to a physical therapist, because I know how that'd be like breaking your leg and be like, no, it's fine. Like, no, it's not.
You have pretty to get intense.
It fixed. So if I had further damage, I would have absolutely reached out. I just I was lucky enough to have just a very mild pregnancy and postpartum. So I just did it on my own.
No, that's great. Obviously I'm 39 weeks pregnant. I'm like hoping any day this will just like to that point. I'm like, I'm done.
When is it?
But I keep in my brain, I'm like, I can't wait to get cleared for exercise, because I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that likes to just sit around either, but I'm so exhausted these days. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
I think I worked out until like 35 weeks, and then I was like, all right, I'm done. And that's coming from me. I was like, I'm done.
It gets exhausting, definitely. But I definitely, I have to keep it in my brain too. Like, okay, when I'm done, like, I should probably go get like an assessment done, make sure that there's, that my foundations are all good.
Right. And it's hard to just know, like, because it's not visible. It's internal. You can't just be like, all right, I'm good now.
Right.
Like, it takes a while. So.
You can't just look down and be like, oh, there's a couple stretch marks, but whatever.
Good now. Good to go.
Absolutely. So now we're going to just go into real quick Kaja Weglars. She's a clinical hypnotherapist who offers personalized hypnotherapy programs designed specifically for you with your unique goals in mind. Release low vibration emotions from the past, overcome childhood traumas, and create a life you love. Become a better mom, wife, and individual, and find your inner bliss through true self-love. Leave the past behind, overcome negative self-talk and unwanted habits, and become empowered. You can reach her at www.facebook.com/Kaja Weglars Hypnotherapy, and that is spelled KASIAWEGLARZ Hypnotherapy, or you can call 603-254-6716. So I was hoping we could talk a little bit about the self-defense portion, because I know you said that most moms come to you, looking for losing weight or getting fit. But self-defense is incredibly important as well, especially if you're, if it's just you going to a park and you got a couple small children and you've got bags on you and stuff, what are you going to do if somebody tries to attack you? And I think that self-defense is so important. So I was hoping we could kind of talk a little bit about that.
So absolutely. I'm a very high anxiety person, and it really came out with my son. So I think about that everywhere I go with him. I panic at the store. I'm like, he has to be in my eyesight. Like, God forbid I just like look away for 1 second to grab something off a shelf. So I'm very hyper aware, and I think that's really the first key to any self-defense is just being aware of your surroundings. If you don't know an attack's coming, you're never gonna do any. It doesn't matter what training you have. If you don't know what's coming, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Hyper awareness is extremely important, and not to say that you should be like judgmental of people, but knowing the people that are around you, and if they have a feeling of being off, not to say like, oh, they have like dyed hair, they're bad people, but like just having an aware, like, are they kind of shifty? Like maybe they just have anxiety, or they just, you know, don't like people and they're in a store and they're uncomfortable, but still being aware that someone's acting what you would deem to be unusual, and just knowing, just being that they're aware. You don't have to be disrespectful to them or you know, just being aware of everyone and everything around you is vital for self-defense. Being a mom and carrying stuff is like a huge fear of mine. I actually, I know I'm probably a little weird and paranoid, but I actually do a lot of practice where I'm running with my child. As soon as he was old enough where his neck was stable, I like to just like, in my brain, I'm like, all right, so let's say someone's coming for me, and I'm like at the gym. I'm not doing this in the street.
In a parking lot.
Right, like I will carry him and see if I can run with him. Like, can I carry him and run? Like, how do I strategically do this? Like, what's the most comfortable thing? I know this sounds crazy, but I think about that because there's a very real chance that might be something that happens. Look at the world today. Like, you might be running from someone with a gun, a bomb, like terrorists, anything. I don't know. A train could just be colliding towards you, and you're like, I gotta grab my child and run. Wild, crazy things, but just things that you should think about. Like, can you grab him? Can you unbuckle him from his seatbelt really quickly, or him or her from their seatbelt? All comes down to awareness. When your kids are older, enrolling them into any sort of self-defense, I will always say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the way to go. Knowing how to hit someone's great, but if you know how to use someone who's bigger than you and use their momentum and their weight to make it their disadvantage, that's just the way to go.
Yeah.
I will always suggest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to be the number one thing for self-defense because it's kind of the only way to get out of certain scenarios. I could choke someone with the collar of their shirt or their tie without them knowing. Whereas if I punch a guy, that's probably not going to do anything because I'm small and they're probably bigger than me. And I am good at punching, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be effective. But I could choke someone unconscious and be completely confident in my abilities. So that's why I will always recommend that. Still understanding how to strike is fun, but it's really important to have some sort of understanding of how to do jiu-jitsu for self-defense. I'm not saying you have to be like, crazy person, but just having, watch a few videos. There's great videos on YouTube that are really easy to just understand. You don't have to be a black belt. You can just look at them like, oh, wow, that makes sense. I just cross my hands like this. And but involving kids at an early age, and even if it's not self-defense against some adult, it could be maybe bullies, explaining how you as a parent want them to go about that, understanding what your school's guidelines are, and just having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and having them understand that. And then talking about the dangers of the world. Like, there's so many things beyond just don't talk to strangers. Because a kid could come up, or an adult could come up to your child, and if they say, hey, your mom's in the hospital, you got to come with me, is your child going to go with them?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be smart enough to say, no, let me talk to a police officer? Like, those are all real self-defense things. So there's a lot more to it than just, like, punching and kicking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you kept making the point of, like, oh, it's not really paranoid, like, But that's a true, like, I remember, when I was a kid, even in, like, kindergarten, you'd have the police officers come to school. We'd meet everybody because they want you to be familiar with authority figures. You learn stranger danger. You learn, stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
You practice, whereas it might sound like, ridiculous.
Crazy paranoid.
Yeah. But it's really not, and you don't know something until you've practiced it because you need it to make it muscle memory.
Absolutely. And so work on that with your kids. And not so much for self-defense. Think about fire playing. You have fire drills in your school. Why? do you ever think about what happens at your house if there's a fire? Have you ever thought about what happens in the middle of the night? Or even if you're talking to your partner and you're like, oh, our kids are asleep. What happened if someone broke into your house at that moment? Do you have plans for how you would get your child out of danger? Like these are things that you got to just ponder a little bit. And that goes into just being aware and having thoughts and plans and ideas. And
No, absolutely. And we plan on homeschooling our daughter. And so part of like building like our homeschool curriculum, because I'm kind of putting it all together myself,
awesome.
is, I plan on every single year having like the first whole week as basically safety week. So it's exactly that. It's like, if there's a fire, what do we do? Like, where's our safety place? Because I remember in school, they'd learn, like they'd teach you, when you go home, talk with your parents, find out like, where would you gather if there was a fire? Because like everybody has to get out of the house.
Right.
How does everybody get out of the house? And then where would you gather to make sure that everybody's safe? So like stuff like that. And it's so true. Like that is so important because hopefully, you never have to use it.
Right. But in the off chance you do and you're not prepared.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's like we live in a world where everybody, is so like grabby about, buying insurance. And what's the concept of insurance? It's you pay all this money every month for something that may happen,
Right.
But then we don't ever think about like just planning some other things.
Yeah. All the other things in line. I know.
Yeah.
And it is really important. And you don't have to be like a crazy person where you're like, I taped a gun here and there's a gun here. Just having like any awareness of like how many exits. Is it easy to break a window? Can you jump out of the second floor? Like just things like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly. And even just having like a safety room in the house, like, okay, this is where we all gather. If you guys hear something in the middle of the night, this is where we all gather so that we all know we're safe and we're together. Yeah. And then, we can go from there, making sure your kids know how to call 911.
Know the address, your phone
know the
number.
address, phone number,
all of
last
these things
names.
Yeah. Part of self-defense, I guess.
Yeah, and I know you said that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best way to go because that's kind of more grappling and like using someone's body weight against them. Yeah. That kind of thing. But I know you guys do a lot more like Muay Thai kickboxing.
We do, and I won't say that that's bad. I just, all of it's good. Mm-hmm. I just know that in my personal experience with some unawesome things that have happened to me, the only thing that got me out of this situation was going the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu route. Mm-hmm. I have been attacked before, and that's the only thing that I wasn't going to hit this person. Like there wasn't, that wasn't going to be a win. It was going to be a dead me. So the only thing was using that. So I will always suggest that because I'm a small person. So for me, I have to think about that. Like I can't just do crazy things. But I still always say striking's important. It's important, obviously, if you're going down the martial arts road, but it still teaches you that discipline and that respect and that confidence you're going to need. And there's plenty of strikes you can do in self-defense that aren't just a punch. Groin shots are always going to be your number one, and we'll always say that, eye pokes, like your nose, those things. They're not, you don't do those in like competition, but those are great self-defense. Yeah. Tell your kids to aim for the eyes.
Okay. And then, so I mean, do you have any background? Like, obviously, you've done a lot of different, MMA things. But I guess what got you guys into more of the kickboxing, Muay Thai versus doing? Because I know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really popular. Yeah. You can find that almost anywhere, but Muay Thai is a lot more difficult to find. It's super different.
So, Muay Thai and kickboxing are similar and different. Mm-hmm. Muay Thai is the national sport in Thailand. So it has a beautifully rich history. I think it's martial arts are an art for a reason, and I think it's beautiful. It's very unique, but very brutal. It's very different where the point is not to get points in a competition, whereas kickboxing and karate, you're not really trying to hurt anyone, you're just getting points to win. Muay Thai is really about dominating another person and trying, not hurt them, but you want, hurt them. Yeah. But not.
Yeah.
So, most of it is kicks, striking with hands. So, same thing with kickboxing. So, you have boxing, which is just hands, and then kicking. The striking, so the punches are the same with Muay Thai and kickboxing, and for the most part, kicks are the same between the both. The only difference is you have knees and elbows added into kickboxing or added into Muay Thai that's not in kickboxing. So elbows are very damaging, and that would be a little more helpful for self-defense because elbows are not, throwing an elbow is not necessarily a power strike, but it's a very damaging one. That will split you wide open.
Yeah.
So knees and elbows would be more on the self-defense than just kicks and punches because you're never going to throw. I love throwing kicks, and that's what I'm really good at, and I can do that in a cage, in a ring. I would not do that in a street fight because it's not going to be a win-win for my small frame.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was a guy. But it's not going to be a win-win. What's going to happen is I'm going to probably have to either run away or close the distance between whoever's attacking me, and I'm going to probably knee them in the balls and maybe elbow them in the nose, assuming they're short enough.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Muay Thai is more of the aggressive sport, which would be helpful with self-defense. Kickboxing is really great, and I'm not saying that it's not helpful at all in self-defense, but it's more for point fighting, and it's important for MMA, and it's really fun workout, and hitting things is great stress relief.
Yeah.
So even if you have no interest in ever hurting another human being, and it's great that you don't want to, hitting a bag, there's nothing like it. It's just, it feels good. It just is like, it just is one of those stress relief things. It gets that, like, that primal instinct kind of out without, anything else. Just is a really fun stress relief. And that's kind of why I like to do it, because I get to teach women important aspects of fitness and, controlling their body, having good posture and all that stuff, as well as they get to do something that relieves stress, which is hitting a bag. So I really enjoy that, and most people tend to enjoy that as well, even when they thought they never would.
Yeah. So. No, I could totally see that.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. And Muay Thai in itself, it's very different, and it's really not as popular as kickboxing or JiuJitsu or any of that stuff, just because mostly it is very aggressive, and it's not flashy. It's not, I think it's beautiful because I really like martial arts, and I think they're all beautiful because that's my passion.
Yeah.
But it's not like flashy jump kicks and stuff. It's very small movements. It's very aggressive. It's very, like, contact forward. It's all about, like, putting power behind it. So it's not as popular with most people unless you really have that interest. It's very much a combat sport. Not that, kickboxing and jiu-jitsu are not combat sports, but it's very, like, very rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But I like that.
And I've heard, so I don't know too much about all the different, like, I know a little bit because my husband likes some of the MMA stuff as well. And he's really been interested in, like, Sambo and Muay Thai are the two that he really goes back and forth between. And he's like, I'd love to learn them, like, and get really good at them.
Sambo would be hard to, I don't even know where there's a gym around.
We haven't found one. There's, like, one in Boston, and then there's, like, one random guy, like, up in Lebanon, New Hampshire, but I don't even know if he's still there. Like, it's dying
sport. It's interesting because with the rise of, like, UFC and MMA, and everyone talks about Muay Thai, but it's really not something. It's hard to find a traditional Muay Thai gym. And even though we do Muay Thai, we're not traditional. You're not getting any of the same culture that you would normally get, and that it would be cool, and maybe one day, but we would have to go through, like, an actual crew, which would be similar to, like, a sensei, where they're actually, like, through the lineage, and they're going through the cultural route, whereas most Muay Thai is like what we do, and it's like the Americanized version.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, I know, like I said, I know a little bit about some of them. But Muay Thai, there's a lot of conditioning that's involved as well as there's a lot of, like, I think there's even a thing that they do where, like, they break some of the bones so that way when it refractures and reforms, it comes back harder.
They used to do that in boxing too. It's not recommended, but they do. I will say one of the things they will do is they'll be conditioning their shins. If you ever you can look up Muay Thai kicks, Beaudry, if you just those keywords, and you'll find some very interesting videos. People kicking down trees because you condition there's a lot of kicking in Muay Thai. That's probably like one of the main things is their kicks. Their kicks are destructive. And I know it's weird, but I think it's beautiful because it's just so much work that goes into such a small detail.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The human body can kick a tree down. Like,
yeah.
How is that not wild to anyone? I just think it's crazy cool.
Yeah.
I think the human body's amazing.
Yeah.
We can do crazy things.
Yeah.
Women can make babies, kick down trees.
Right.
I don't know. It's really cool to me.
Yeah. No, it is really cool. And I think, like, my husband and I are always about, like, kind of like what you said, it's more about holistic health than anything else, but really just having a functional body is so important. And it's exactly like that, because it's, like you were saying, what if you have to pick up your kid and run? Well, if you can only run 6 feet, you're not going to go very far with the kid, so it's like being active and fit is not really about like, oh, look how thin I am and look how great I look. It's like, hey, look how functional I am. If I'm ever in danger, I can actually feel confident about being able to be safe. And even like something like kicking down a tree. It's like, that sounds so ridiculous, but you know what? If I had like an off the grid house somewhere and, we're kicking down a tree or cutting it down with an axe, and I could just kick it down in a couple of hits.
Yeah. That's cool.
Like, it's like, what's going to make my life easier, Yeah.
It's all cool
stuff.
And functional health is really important. I was definitely previously like I have to look the part, and now I'm like, I don't care what I look like.
Yeah.
I just want to be the fittest.
Yeah.
and like healthiest.
Healthiest. Yeah. So I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap some of this up now. So I do want to talk about Mothers Illuminated has a VIP group on Facebook where you can access extra content with the Q&A section of each video. You can be a part of a mother's mentorship program through Facebook as well, early access to all of our shows, a promo code for free shipping from our merchandise website. You'd be notified a week prior to each show being filmed so that you can contribute questions that may be picked for the Q&A segment. It's a great program, only for $8 monthly from Patreon. So you can sign up for that monthly membership at www.patreon.com/mothersilluminated. The show can also be found on podcast.mothersilluminated.com, as well as our YouTube channel. If you're interested in being a part of the show, reach out to us at mothersilluminated@gmail.com. You can also find related merchandise at teespring.com/stores/mothers-illuminated. So it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on here.
No problem.
And for taking time out of your busy life to do this.
It's a lot of craziness, but it's good.
Yeah. Thank you.